Adding integers. We are going to add integers using the rule now. So for same signs, we add the numbers together and we keep the sign of the numbers. So if the numbers we're adding together were positive, it stays positive. If the numbers we were adding together were negative, it stays negative. But if the signs are different, like one is positive and one is negative, we subtract the absolute values of the numbers. So remember, absolute value is the distance from zero, so it's always positive. So we're going to subtract them like they're positive. And then we're going to keep the sign of the number with the greatest absolute value. So we're going to decide which number is farther from zero, and that would be to determine my sign of my solution. So let's get started. Negative 12 plus negative 8. Are the signs the same or different? They're the same. So we just add the numbers together. So 12 plus 8 equals 20. Now, since the signs are the same, and when we added them together, they were negative, so the sign stays negative. So my solution is negative 20. Negative 10 plus 6. Are the signs the same or different? They're different. So this time I subtract the absolute values. So I just subtract them like they're positive. 10 minus 6 equals 4. Now I have to determine the symbol for the solution, or the sign for the solution. So who is farther from 0, which means who has the greatest absolute value? Negative 10 is 10 spaces from 0, and 6 is only 6 spaces from 0. So negative 10 is the greatest absolute value, so the sign of the solution is negative. So my answer is negative 4. Negative 3 plus 15. Are the signs the same or different? Different. So I subtract the absolute values. So we're going to subtract them like they're positive. 15 minus 3 equals 12. Now I determine the symbol or the sign for the solution. So negative 3 is 3 spaces from 0. 15 is 15 spaces from 0. So since 15 is the greatest absolute value, my solution is going to be positive 12. Negative 14 plus 11. Are the signs the same or different? Different. So we're going to subtract the absolute values. 14 minus 11, which equals 3. Now determine the sign of the solution. Negative 14 is 14 spaces from 0, and 11 is 11 spaces from 0. So negative 14 has the greatest absolute value, so my solution is going to be negative 3. Now another way to determine this is who has more to start with. We have more negatives than we have positives, so my solution would be negative. Negative 2 plus negative 8 plus negative 5. Are the signs the same or different? They're the same. So I'm just going to add the numbers together. 2 plus 8 plus 5 is 15. And since they are all negative, it just stays negative. So my solution is negative 15. Negative 9 plus 25 plus negative 11. Are the signs the same or different? Well, this time it's both, because negative 9 is the same symbol or the same sign as negative 11, but 25 and negative 9 have different signs. One's positive, one's negative. So for one of these, I like to use what we call a T-chart. So I make a column for my negatives and a column for my positive numbers. So I'm going to put my negatives in my T-chart, negative 11 and negative 9. And I like to line them up from, for the negatives, it would be smallest to greatest, because the larger you look is actually the farther you go from 0, so the smaller you are. And then for my positives, I like to line them up from greatest to least, but I only have one, so I have 25. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add each column. The reason I can add each column is because these signs are the same. And remember, same signs add. So if they're in the column together, they have the same sign, so I can add them. So in the negative column, I have a total of negative 20, and in the positive column, I have positive 25. Now what I do to add these together is, because the signs are different now, we actually subtract the absolute values. So 25 minus 20 is 5. Now I determine the symbol, because I go and look at the column and I see that here I have negative 20, and that's 20 spaces from 0, and 25 is 25 spaces from 0. So 25 is the greatest absolute value. So my solution is going to be positive 5. Now another way to remember that is who has more to start with. We have more positives than we have negatives. So my solution would come out to be positive. Let's try one more like that. 2 plus negative 22 plus 10 plus negative 4. So are the signs the same or different? They're both, so we're going to use our t-chart. So all my negatives would be negative 22 and negative 4, and my positives this time are going to be 10 and 2. So I'm going to add each column, because in each column the signs are the same. So negative 22 and negative 4 make negative 26, and in my positive column I have 10 and 2, which make 12. Now these signs are different, so in order to add these two integers together, I actually subtract their absolute values. So 26 minus 12 is 14. Now I'm going to determine the symbol of the solution, or the sign of the solution. So I look at the columns and I see I have more negatives than I have positives, or this is the greatest absolute value. So my solution is going to be negative 14. And that is adding integers using the rule.